I'm Natalie, living in Queens, New York. I've been orphaned since childhood, living with my grandmother and aunt. They're the only family I've known. Since elementary school, I've been close with Laura, who lives just a block away from me. Laura has a similar background to mine. Her father abandoned her and her mother when Laura was 4. By the time she was 10, her mother left Laura with her grandparents and remarried. Laura and I grew up together, considering each other as sisters. I have a strong personality, while Laura is very feminine. Both of us lacking affection, we deeply cherish and support each other. When we went to college, Laura and I decided to attend the same university. By sophomore year, Laura met a guy named Kane. Kane is 2 years older than us, with a somewhat eccentric appearance. He's tall and very skinny. His pale white skin made him look frail and delicate. His brown hair always hung long and somewhat disheveled. Kane had multiple piercings on his ears, nose, lips, chin, and eyebrows. Living alone, he never mentioned or met any of his relatives. Kane and Laura quickly fell in love after just 1 month of knowing each other. When Laura told me she had accepted Kane's confession of love, I was genuinely surprised and somewhat disappointed. I didn't like Kane for some reason. I just didn't feel fond of him. Many times I caught his eerie and intimidating gaze towards Laura, but I had no right to interfere in her personal life. Laura's grandmother also advised her several times to be careful and vigilant with Kane. After 3 months of dating, Laura and Kane announced their engagement, shocking everyone. Laura was so deeply in love with Kane that she brushed off the warnings. They moved to the house that Kane rented previously in the neighboring town after getting married. Laura missed out on her studies, choosing to stay at home and do household chores. At first, she would often come back to visit. We went out together, and Laura would talk about married life with Kane with an extremely happy face. Seeing Laura happy, I gradually started to trust her decision. But Laura's visits gradually became less frequent. Her messages and calls to me also decreased. Even when I sent her messages for days, Laura would only reply briefly. The happy photos Laura shared with her husband on her personal account slowly turned into posts filled with hidden emotions. Once, when I visited Laura, she looked visibly thinner. She led me into the house and I greeted Kane cheerfully. He responded with an extremely cold tone, not even looking at me. Kane looked at Laura with a threatening gaze. He said he had to go out for something and would be back in the afternoon. As soon as Kane left, Laura burst into tears when I asked how she was doing. She cried a lot for a long time. I hugged Laura, trying to comfort her. Although Laura didn't share anything, I knew she wasn't happy. In the following weeks, Laura kept posting images of herself on her social media. In these photos, Laura's facial features appeared familiar yet strangely different. Her eyes seemed soulless, gazing into an undefined space. What stood out was that all the photos had the same expression, no longer radiating the bright and innocent smile as before. Through these images, I noticed Laura becoming increasingly unfamiliar. I also noticed the tattoo on her neck had disappeared. I wondered if that was really Laura. One evening around 11 o'clock, I received a phone call. Natalie, I'm scared. I just had a dream about Laura. She said she was having trouble breathing. Her face was distorted, limbs broken. I couldn't reach Laura anymore. Laura's grandmother cried and begged me to find Laura. I immediately tried to contact her but also couldn't reach her. With a sense that something terrible had happened, I immediately reported to the police in the town where Laura and Kane lived. When the police arrived at the house, both Laura and Kane were missing. The house was empty, devoid of any belongings. In the bedroom, they found a sex doll sitting on the bed. It looked exactly like Laura. The doll was still very new and appeared to have been cleaned before being left behind. The house was clean too, with no signs or personal belongings left behind. Through the street security cameras, the police couldn't find any trace of Laura and Kane for the past 10 days. They had vanished. Upon closer inspection of the images Laura had posted before disappearing, it wasn't Laura, but the doll that had been found. Where had they gone? The doll was sent back to Laura's grandmother by the police. She cried a lot. The doll seemed to remind her even more of Laura. Nearly a year passed, but news about Laura and Kane remained a mystery. I often visited Laura's grandmother. She cherished the doll and placed it in Laura's former bedroom, as if Laura still existed in this house. Looking at the doll, I truly wondered, what was its purpose? Why did everything in Laura's house disappear except for it? Suddenly, I noticed a pair of the doll's arms seemed to be sticking out. There was something sharp inside, about to puncture the outer layer of the doll's skin. Laura's grandmother and I decided to cut the doll's arm to see what was inside. As the knife sliced through, the doll's arm split open along a long seam. From within, a decaying human hand emerged along with the slimy silicone material. The smell of plastic and decay filled the air heavily. Laura's grandmother was in shock, clutching her chest and screaming before collapsing. I led her out of the living room and locked Laura's room, then called the police. After examination, the police determined that the body inside the sex doll was Laura's. The cause of Laura's death could not be determined. No words can describe the pain and panic of Laura's grandmother at that moment. For the past 8 years, Kane has been on the run, with warrants issued throughout the United States and some neighboring countries. But they have never found any leads. Even his personal information is not on the national management system. I always remember Laura, my sweet and warm-hearted girl. I'm Erica, 18 years old, living in Ohio with my parents and a younger brother. I am really glued to my phone. I can spend hours, even whole days browsing the web. 2 or 3 a.m. is usually when I go to bed every day. And the posture will always be me holding the phone and dozing off. I feel like there's too little time to use my phone during the day. Whenever possible, the only thing I do is sit or lie down and hold my phone. I rarely share my thoughts and difficulties with my parents. Sharing it via text with friends or strangers on social media is easier for me. One day, after having dinner with my parents, I went to my room to do some things and grabbed my phone. I had no one to talk to. I updated a status on my Instagram account. I'm really bored and want someone to talk to. At exactly 3 a.m., when I was about to go to sleep, I received a message from an unknown Instagram account. "You're not sleeping, huh?" I was quite surprised, staring at the message for a few seconds. But thinking about the status I had updated, I thought someone else might be lonely like me. The typing indicator appeared. A few seconds later, another message made me shiver. "Do you know? Demons appear at 3 a.m., accompanied by a red demon face." I felt uncomfortable and immediately blocked that account, wondering who the crazy person was. I continued browsing the web. About 5 minutes later, a message was sent from another strange account. "I will devour you if you dare to do that again." My heart started beating faster. "Don't be scared. I'm just kidding. I'll always be by your side. I'm seeing you very clearly. I can smell your perfume. I really like it." I jumped up reading those creepy messages. Observing around the room, I looked closely at every object, every nook and cranny. I felt scared of the very familiar things I use daily. The sound of a message being sent startled me. "Are you curious to know who I am?" Immediately after, a grotesque picture was sent, and I was so frightened that I dropped the phone on the bed. It took a few seconds to calm down. I went online to search for information about the picture. The Wendigo, a malevolent spirit in Algonquian culture. It's often described as a tall, skinny creature with long, sharp claws. The Wendigo is said to have the ability to transform into a human and eat people. I read every word, and goosebumps covered my body. Something super surprising is going to happen to you. Wait and see. My heart felt like it was being squeezed, beating twice as fast. I looked around. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't good at all. The sound of a message echoed. I hastily picked up the phone. It was a picture in which Thomas, my boyfriend, was dead hanging. I screamed as loudly as I could, trying to release all the fear within me. Surprised, aren't you? I quickly jumped out of bed and rushed towards the door of the room, desperate to call out loudly for my parents' help. Just as my hand reached for the doorknob, the sound of a message echoed again. I'm behind the door waiting for you. Open the door. Let me taste your blood. My legs went weak, and I collapsed to the floor. I tried to breathe steadily to calm myself down. I dialed my mother's phone, but it couldn't connect. I called my dad, my younger brother, my best friend, but all in vain. By this point, I was so scared that I felt like crying. I was trapped in my own room with a flesh-eating demon. The unbelievable and absurd was happening to me.
Don't cry. I'm right next to you.
The sound of the message echoed again, and I trembled as I held the phone. Another photo was sent. It was my parents' bedroom, with them lying on the bed asleep. But the figure holding the camera that captured them was eerie, tall and gaunt. Next was a photo of my little brother sleeping. The photographer was so close, yet faceless. In the corner of the image, sharp claws were visible. I felt like I was going mad. I was being tormented and controlled by that demon. Panic, fear, helplessness, everything compressed in my chest as if it were about to explode. The next photo was sent. And it was me, precisely at this moment. I was screaming in agony and despair. Looking around the room, I wanted to find that demon. I shouted angrily and challenged. I wouldn't let that demon control me anymore. A horrifying laughter echoed, and the room was still empty except for me. I searched the room, destroying everything within reach, peering into the smallest corners. Finally, I looked under the bed. There it was, holding the phone with a sinister smile on the face identical to mine, mouth full of sharp teeth.
I am right next to you. We are one and together. We are residing within one another.